right, this is what's interesting to us this morning. We're going to continue this conversation. That's brought to you by Grand Prix Motorsports. If you're looking for the original motorcycle, talking about the Indian motorcycle, check them out off of County Line Road and
Santa Fe.
Nicely done. All right, let's continue what we were talking about.
Santa Fe, by the way.
That players
If you didn't understand what I was saying, it was Santa Fe.
players will conform to Bill Belichick, right?
They do, or they leave, or they get cut.
Okay. There's a reason why. He has a proven track record.
Yeah.
And I hate to say it, and I know it's sacrilegious to say anything negative here about John Elway or Mike Shanahan.
Sure.
Mike Shanahan needed John Elway as much as John Elway needed Mike Shanahan.
Okay.
But let's really call it like it is with Mike Shanahan. He won one playoff game
After Elway retired.
after Elway retired.
Right.
Why would anybody look at Mike Shanahan and say, I have all this reverence for you when you did it almost 20 years ago? Bill Belichick does it year after year after year.
He's the greatest coach of all time, also.
I think he is I personally think he is the greatest coach of all time.
How's he
So I
not?
think we're talking about apples and oranges here when we're talking about Belichick and Shanahan, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, maybe green apples and red apples or what have you.
No, I
You're
think
going different produce.
I think we're talking apples. I'll go apples and chicken. I think we're talking two different things.
That sounds good, actually.
Two completely different things. Shanahan, I think, did a terrific job in bringing in free agents around Elway to build those championship teams.
Right.
But once he lost his big piece,
Right.
the entire thing fell apart. And in a lot of ways, it started with Elway leaving, Terrell Davis's injury, and
Right.
boom, it was over.
Well, it comes down to this debate that we in sports have all the time. Like, on one hand, it's a coach and a GM can bring in all these players on that defense and make it amazing, and that's the mastermind aspect. And then there's the other side of it. It's like, if you got a good quarterback, you're going to win a bunch. If you don't have a good quarterback, you're not going to win a bunch. Doesn't matter who's coach, doesn't matter who's GM. And I think you could really break down the post Elway Shanahan years both ways. Like, oh hey, man, those are great defensive players, took some risks, the whole thing. But if you don't have that guy, you're swimming upstream.
And they had it the one year they almost got there with Jake Plummer.
Sure.
That was the year they probably should have been in the Super Bowl when they lost to the Steelers. Got great play from Jake Plummer. He finally kind of fit Shanahan's system. But when I covered the two championship teams, the two Super Bowl teams, there was some serious friction there in terms of system versus the players.
Yeah.
The players felt like the system got way too much credit. And to their point, when Shannon Sharp left and Elway left and Davis left, the Broncos, it wasn't the system. It was a great system that benefited from having three of these huge Hall of Fame players. Davis should be in the Hall of Fame. Shannon Sharp is, and John Elway is, and that's where there was it is a system, but they were special players in a system. They weren't just system guys, and I think that's their delineation. But Belichick has benefited greatly from having Tom Brady. The 1 year Brady got hurt, what happened? They won 11 games. They didn't make the playoffs.
Right.
What I'm about to ask you guys is not fair.
Okay.
And it's completely hypothetical.
All right.
Okay? But if you put cocktails in front of John Elway and Mike Shanahan and ask them to be completely honest, and we all know that teams win championships.
Yeah.
But if you said to them, who is most responsible for winning back-to-back titles, what would Shanahan say and what would Elway say?
Well, I mean, I'll just throw this out. I mean, Elway's first Super Bowl, he didn't really play that well. I mean, he had the helicopter play, the famous play that we'll talk about for decades.
I'm saying between those two guys,
Right.
they can pick themselves or they can pick the guys sitting next to them.
Well, I'm just starting it out as a pass it to Troy, but let's not forget, for all the great games Elway had, in one of the two biggest games of his life, he really didn't play that well. So I pass it to you.
I think Shanahan says Shanahan. Elway says Davis.
Isn't that it? Now, why do you see? I agree with you. I think Shanahan says Shanahan.
Yeah, oh yeah. Because he drafted him, he put the roster together, and he's going to say, how many did you win before I got here? I mean, this coach is the coach, Eric.
Boss.
He's the guy. These guys they're not here if I'm not here. Shanahan controlled from everything from the coffee to the copy machine. He was, so there's no way when they win, he's, oh, you guys did it.
Yeah.
No way. He took credit. But I've said Elway would say Davis because he had lost four, right? Or three. And got smothered, just absolutely his ears boxed in those games until he had a running game. So I think he would say Davis.
That's interesting.
But there's no way Shanahan would say, right here.
Little known fact here, when did you get to Denver?
2007.
So you you were well, but you were covering the Nuggets. Did you cover the Broncos much?
I've never dealt with Shanahan. Never dealt with him, but I think he's a Hall of Fame coach.
And you dealt with Shanahan.
Correct.
And Troy will tell you that Shanahan read every one of your columns or every one of your articles because they were sitting on his desk at 6 o'clock in the morning, weren't they?
Yeah, they printed everything out. That was before I covered.
Did you know this?
I
No,
covered
that's
them.
interesting.
Covered them pre-internet. So like, at the Daily Times call at Longmont that I was covering. I was a beat writer. I traveled to road
Right.
games, so I was
Yeah.
a beat writer. But that was pre-internet, so I was as far off the radar.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I got into his crosshairs a couple of times over stories that someone I could tell had told him about.
Sure.
But he
Right.
wasn't waking up every day looking for the Daily Times call and the
Sure,
clips.
sure.
But the point is
But
that
he read everything, or
he-
was told of everything that was written.
he had, from what I understand, almost everything sitting on his desk
Right.
in the morning, so he knew what everybody was saying about him. And you know what? And you said that you got into his crosshairs
A few times.
A few
Very-
times.
very few times.
It's a real badge of honor to get called up to his office.
Okay, I wasn't big enough to get called to his office. You did?
I did over the David Kirkus thing,
What was
over the
that?
whole lie detector thing.
Oh,
Okay.
wow!
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I did a commentary on Fox 31 saying,
Yeah.
Mike, who the heck do you think you are? Proclaiming that David Kirkus is innocent
Right.
before a jury
Right,
trial.
right,
right,
A
yeah.
polygraph isn't even admissible in court.
Right.
And Jim Sacamano walks up to me after either an OTA or
Sure,
training
Mike
camp.
wants to talk
He
to
goes,
you.
Mike wants to talk to you.
in his office.
No, it wasn't. It was actually on the field.
Oh, wow.
It was actually on, and he's getting all red-faced, although, whatever.
That's one of my favorite things. We all have stories like this about a coach and a writer just exploding. They
Right.
on ESPN Radio here in town, they did a thing of Hochman versus George Carl. They had round
Right.
one, ding, and they'd play all these great tapes.
Right.
I mean, it's just part of the job. It's a fun thing. After the fact, you guys stand by your story.
All right, that segment was brought to you by Grand Prix Motorsports. If you're looking for the original motorcycle, talking about the Indian motorcycle, there is Terry on his 2015 Indian Chieftain. Of course, he got that at Grand Prix Motorsports off of County Line Road and
Santa Fe.